When Jesus would come to this planet in the Old Testament, he came sometimes in human form. He was referred to in the Old Testament as the angel of Jehovah. I don't have time to explain all of that theologically, but we could. We could have a Bible class and show you passages that once you begin to understand them, that every time the angel of Jehovah came, he didn't speak for God like the other angels would say, the Father says, or God says, or Jehovah says. The angel of Jehovah always spoke, I say. We understand then that Jesus did, in the era of the Old Testament, occasionally visit this planet. He came as the angel of Jehovah, the messenger of Jehovah. It was the Son. And on occasion, he did appear in a human body. In the New Testament, when the Son came, he could have appeared again in a human body if he had so chosen. But that was not the plan. The plan was when he came in the New Testament era, what we refer to as the New Testament era, he would come as one of us in every sense of the word, which means that he would not just appear. He would not just take on some human form that he could then disappear. He would come through the process of human birth. God decided that he would choose a woman to be this mother. As a matter of fact, you can read this story beginning in Luke chapter 1, beginning in verse 26. If you have a Bible with you, you might want to turn there. Luke chapter 1, beginning in verse 26. It says, in the 6th month. Let me explain what that means. There's a lady named Elizabeth who is already pregnant. This is the 6th month of her pregnancy. Her child is going to be named John. He will be known as John the Baptist, John the Immerser. Her cousin, Mary, we're about to read about. So it was in the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth. Gabriel is an archangel. There's another archangel we read about in the Bible, Michael. The archangel Michael was a warrior angel. Anytime he showed up, it was to do battle of some kind. Gabriel, this particular archangel, would do battle, but typically when he showed up, it was not to fight. Typically when he showed up, it was to bring some kind of great proclamation, some news. And so when Gabriel showed up, he was bringing something that would be amazing for somebody to hear. So in Elizabeth's 6th month of pregnancy, God sent an archangel with good news to a little town called Nazareth in Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph, a descendant of David. Now let me explain a little bit about the culture of the day. She probably was about 15 years old, because in that culture, by the time you were 15, you were not considered to be a child in any sense of the word any longer. You were considered to be an adult. I mean, at 15 today, you'd be entering high school and planning your junior prom for the next year and the senior prom for the year after that, and all the fun things that you would do. And we tend not to heap a whole lot of responsibility on people that age. Some do, but some don't. Well, I guess probably most don't. But by her culture, by that age, she was considered a full-fledged woman doing a woman's work. But she was a virgin, meaning that not only had she never been married, she had never been with a man. Now, she's pledged to be married to a man named Joseph. Understand that anytime God chooses to do great things, he picks a man named Joseph. Okay, that theology is a little shaky. It's important that he is a descendant of David because by the prophecy of the Old Testament, when God would come in human form, he would come as a descendant of David. Now, in their culture, when you were engaged, it was as if you were married, except for the privilege of living in the same home and being with each other as the way married couples are with each other. But it was a marriage every other way. The only way to end an engagement in that day and time, in that culture, was by divorce. So that's how serious this relationship is. She is pledged to a man named Joseph, a descendant of David, and this virgin's name was Mary. The angel went to her and said, "Greetings, you who are highly favored. The Lord is with you." Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. I mean, typically, if somebody shows up and you've never seen them before and they say, "You are highly favored, the Lord is with you," you're wondering, who is this? What is this about? That's what she's doing. She's troubled. But the angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary. You have found favor with God. You'll be with child and give birth to a son, and you're to give him the name Jesus." Now, in the Old Testament, that would be pronounced Joshua, because that would be the Hebrew way of just looking at it. This is the Greek culture, and so rather than Joshua, it is Jesus. It's a very common name. It'd be like being named Joe in our culture. It's just a very common name. So you're going to have this boy, and you're going to name him Jesus, a common name. He will be great, and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David. Now picture this. 15. She's considered to be grown, but she doesn't have a whole lot of experience in life yet. And she's being told that you're going to have a child, and this child will be the Son of God. And this child will actually have the throne of David, and he will reign over the house of Jacob forever. His kingdom will never end. How will this be, Mary asked the angel, since I'm a virgin? This gives us a little insight into Mary's personality, by the way. She wasn't some meek, mild wallflower. She actually questioned an archangel. You're telling me this is going to happen? We have a problem here, sir. I am a virgin. There's no way. As a matter of fact, when I read that, I picture her being a little indignant. Who do you think I am? The angel answered, the Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you, so the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God. In other words, you are a virgin who's going to have a child. This is going to be a unique birth. No other person ever born on this planet will be born this way. Has been, is now, or ever will be in the future. You'll be the only one. Even Elizabeth, your relative, is going to have a child in her old age, and she who was said to be barren is in her 6th month. What he's saying is, what you understand is that God can do this. If he can make your cousin, who is an older woman, become pregnant, he can also make a virgin become pregnant. And so, God chose that when his son would come to this planet, he would have a mother. And he chose this particular girl. Well, I guess I should call her woman, because in her culture she truly was. He chose this particular woman. She was the one who had been highly favored. As a matter of fact, we're supposed to talk about her in that light. I think sometimes people in the Protestant version of Christianity sometimes kind of put Mary off to the side because our Catholic friends revere her so much, but we make a mistake when we do that. Because God chose this woman of all the women who had ever lived to be the one who would be the mother of his child. Now, think about what she's picturing here, what she's thinking in her heart. She knows that she's engaged to be married, and now she's just been told, you're going to have a child. This child is going to come from God. It's going to be placed in you by a miracle. She, in her culture, has to understand what's going to happen to her reputation. People are going to say, wait a minute, she's not even married yet, and she's going to have a baby? I guess in the year 2013, that's not quite the scandal it would have been when I was a boy. I was born in 1949. I know I was born that year, but I don't remember much about it. But as I was a boy, it would have been a great scandal, to the point that when I was a boy, if a girl became pregnant out of wedlock, she would leave that part of the country. She'd go live with relatives way off in another state somewhere. Or if they didn't have relatives in another state, she'd go live in a home off somewhere to have her baby, because it was such a scandal. So in 2013, maybe it's not considered to be, but at least in my lifetime I have seen it. And you can imagine in an extremely conservative culture as the first century Judaism, how she would be looked upon. And yet she takes this responsibility gladly. She's going to be the mother of the Son of God. You see, even in the Old Testament, God had made it very plain that we are to honor our parents. It's in the 10 Commandments. It's also listed again in Ephesians chapter 6, where it says to honor your father and mother. And then, as Paul writes that, he says, remember, that was the first command God ever gave, that he included a promise with, that it may go well with you and that you will live long on the earth. What God is saying is, if you do that, if you honor your father, if you honor your mother, I will actually bless you with a longer life than you would have had otherwise. Things will actually go better for you than they would have otherwise. Now, it's hard for us to measure that because we don't know what it would have been like otherwise. But it's a promise that he made to us. So, being the mother of the Son of God, did that mean that her life was going to be easy? No, it was not going to be easy. It was going to be the life of a mother. And the life of a mother is never easy. Now, I can speak to what it's like to be a father. I am a father. I have 3 beautiful daughters. I understand what it's like to be a good father on the few occasions I've managed that. I know what it's like to be a mediocre father. I know what it's like to be a bad father on the times when I have failed that way too. Any other men relate to that? We know what it's like to do all those things. I remember many years ago, anybody remember when the Cosby Show was on television? And that perfect family? A young lady said to me, I wish that Bill Cosby were my father. I said, anybody could be that good a father if they only had to do it for a half hour a week and had a script. Real life is a lot different. And as much as I understand about being a father, I have very little comprehension of what it means to be a mother. Because God blessed women in ways that he did not bless men. Now, we could say the other way around, that God has blessed men in ways he didn't bless women, and that is true. But you, ladies, are the ones who have been made biologically so that you could actually have a life start within you, to grow within you. And when each of our children would move around in the womb and an arm or a leg would come across that belly and you could see it and reach over and feel it, it would be marvelous for me to feel, but I had no way to understand what it would be like to have that life inside of you. Alice did. We married when we were 20. As a matter of fact, my paternal grandmother said, if you marry before you're 21, you will never be a free man. We married when we were 20. A few months after that, we became pregnant with our first child, who was named Angela Michelle when she was born November the 1st, 1970. Angel Michael, Angela Michelle. As a matter of fact, Angel is with us. She's sitting on the second row. She typically does not come to church with us. Angel's a special child, and crowds bother her, but she wanted to come today, and she's here. So I'm going to use her to illustrate a couple of things about mothers, if I may. Alice had a tough pregnancy. The labor was also intense. 3 weeks of labor, is that what it was? That's the way she felt. I think it was 28 hours, a tough birth. When Angel was 6 weeks old, they told us that she had a birth defect and that it was going to possibly do her in, and we had to take her to Eggleston Children's Hospital in Atlanta, where they did surgery to save her life. That's when I began to understand some things about mothers. I mean, I knew my mother was strong and my mother was tough. My mother is also here with us today. But I also didn't understand just how tough and strong Alice would be. If you've met my wife, she's a very mild-mannered, sweet, kind, gentle person. People are always telling me, you know, she's a saint. What's God punishing her for? Why is she married to you? I don't know, but he punished her twice. And this, when we were at the hospital, an intern came along, and I think I may have told this story. Forgive me, it just fits here, though. It was time to change the IV, and they put the IVs in the baby's scalps, and then they do things where the babies can't rip them out. And this young intern came along and said, it's time to change the IV. We will do it. I will do it. The nurse, those nurses are outstanding, by the way, said, please, doctor, you're too busy. I'll do it. You could tell she didn't want him to. He took little Angel down to a room and closed the door. The nurse was with him. We heard her scream for 5 minutes. Opened the door, and there were big bruises all over her scalp where he had tried and failed. The nurse was putting it in as this arrogant young man walked out. And my meek, mild-mannered, sweet, and gentle wife made a growl that would have terrified any hunter on the planet and went for him. He wasn't totally stupid. He ran. He was running down the hall with a little white coat flapping up behind him. Alice right behind him trying to catch him. Me trying to catch her because I can't raise this baby by myself. But he had threatened what she loved. So we went through all of that. We went through the other difficulties Angel had early in life. We have several other families here who have special needs children. As tough as it is to raise every child, there's always unique problems that come with raising a special child. Also unique blessings, would you agree, those of us who have the special children? Angel has been visiting down in Montgomery, Alabama, and yesterday morning I drove down to Coleman to meet them to pick Angel up. I got there a little early. I had my Bible with me so I could study it some more for today's sermon, and I was sitting there. I had borrowed a pickup truck from my brother, and I'm sitting there in that truck with the window down. It's at a McDonald's in Coleman. The place is packed, no empty parking spaces at all. And as I'm sitting there reading, I'm thinking, wait a minute, they won't recognize this truck. So I got outside and put the tailgate down and sat on the tailgate with my Bible reading so they could see me when they pulled in. I've been sitting there a few minutes when the space next to me opened up, and this old car pulled in. You know these old cars the size of a small cruise ship. You know what I'm talking about? Old car pulled in with an elderly black gentleman in it, and he opened the door and said, what are we reading? Because I had my Bible in my hand. And I said, well, right now I'm looking at Timothy. And he got up with his Bible and came over there, and his Bible was well marked, highlighted, notes in the margins. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm trying to find a good sermon for tomorrow. He said, I've already got mine. I said, really? And he told me his name, told me where he preached. We sat there and talked about the word for a few minutes. And then he said, you don't mind if I sit with you? I've got to wait for a while. I said, really, why? And he said, well, I've got a little problem with my car, and I went over here to O'Reilly. They said there's a little piece and they could put it on, but I don't have any. I only had a couple of dollars on me. I'm a diabetic, so I had to come over here to get a burger. And I'm trying to call one of my deacons, and he won't answer his phone. Do you mind if I just sit here till I can get him, and he'll bring me the money? I said, how much is the part? He said, $17.37. I said, I want to tell you something interesting. I never carry cash, never. I just use my debit card. But as I walked out of the house this morning, the last thing I did was look at Alice and say, you got any extra cash I can put in my pocket just in case? And she pulled out the first thing she found, which was $18. I guess it was for you. So I handed him the $18. He didn't want to read anymore. He wanted to get his car fixed, so. But first he had to preach a while, and he actually got to preaching. Old black preaching style. You know what I'm talking about? God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love. And then he realized we were at McDonald's and went, I said, no, brother, keep preaching. So he did. He preached on for a while, and I thought, one more blessing through a child. That's special. That's why I had $18 to help that brother get home so he could finish up and preach this morning. And it's just kind of cool how God does those things, don't you think? I didn't have enough money left for a burger. Apparently God saw that he had a need and I didn't. So what does this got to do with mothers? The boy turns 12. Oh, I'm sorry. The boy is less than 2. And a king wants to kill him. I know that's tough on a dad. I can't imagine how that begins to feel to a mother. They leave the country. After that king is dead, they come back. He's 12. They've taken him to Jerusalem, and as they leave, the men are traveling in one group, the women are traveling in a different group. He's just on that cutting edge. He could travel with the men, just old enough to do that, still just young enough to travel with the women. Both groups think he's with the other. It takes him that night to discover that he's not with either group. They're terrified. They have lost their son. I can imagine what a father feels when that happens. I think somehow a mother would feel it deeper. It took them 3 days. 3 days to find him. By the way, if you've read your New Testament, you understand that God was teaching her, because a lot later she was going to lose him for 3 days again, when he would be in a tomb. And when he was young, he was teaching her, he may not be here right with you, but he's coming back. When he got older, he started to preach. He was 30 when he started his ministry, and people said all kinds of bad things about him. As a matter of fact, it began to circulate that he had a demon. And so Mary did what mothers do. By the way, somewhere along the line, Joseph has died. The Bible doesn't say when. He just disappears from the scene. So Mary takes her other children. It says Jesus' mother and brothers. This is in Matthew chapter 12, by the way. And she comes to this house where Jesus is teaching. And what has she done? They're talking about my boy. They say he's got a demon. Here he is out here preaching, and people have all turned against him. I'm doing what mamas do. I brought his brothers with me. We're going to take him home. And so she comes, but the house is so crowded she can't even get in. So they send word into Jesus, your mother and your brothers are outside. And he did something that must have cut her to the quick. He said, who is my mother? Who are my brothers? You are my mothers and my brothers. And he refused to go with her. He refused to go with her because he needed to do what was right. He knew his mission. As a matter of fact, deep in her heart, she had to understand that as well. They'd been in a party once and they ran out of wine. And like a typical mom, she looked at him and said, they're out of wine. Now, if you're not old enough to understand the way that men and women communicate, men ask women to do things. Women just mention that it needs to be done. Am I telling the truth? She won't say, can you adjust the temperature? She'll say, I'm hot. And men learn that's code for get up, go adjust the temperature. So she says they're out of wine. And he said, woman? It doesn't sound, it's not as respectful if I'm making it sound. In his culture, if I'm woman, basically here's what he says. Don't you tell me what to do. He's a grown man. He's already preaching. And he made the wine because Mama wanted him to. And so when he refuses to go out, it had to cut her to the quick. Deep in her heart, she had to know he's doing the right thing. But she's a mom. She knows what they're saying about her boy. She wants him to come home. She wants to take him away from all of that pain. And when they finally kill him, she's there. They put him on a cross on a hill, and she's standing there watching him die this terrible, painful death. He still loves her. He always has. One of the last things he said was he turned to one of his only disciples that didn't run away, and he said, John, you take care of my mom. Mom, John's going to take care of you. As he was dying, it was one of his last thoughts. So mothers, they feel deeply. From a man's standpoint, when our children grow up and they face tough things, we try to stiffen our backbone, steel our glaze, look at them and say, be strong and do what's right. And no matter how much we, the men, may feel in our own hearts fear or terror about what they're about to face, we, because of culture, try to stand strong and say, you can do it. And so it's the men who send our sons and daughters into battle. It is the mothers who scour the battlefields for their bodies so they can bring their babies home and bury them. I don't know how I could understand how to be a mother. But our country has chosen this day to honor mothers. And just as God honored Mary, we honor you, understanding that it has to be tough, and particularly when you see that things don't go well for your children, because occasionally they will not. And there are times when you want to rescue them and then take them away, and they won't go because they're facing life on their own. But it's not because they do not love you. It's because they're trying to do what they believe to be is right. So, honor to all mothers, to my mother, to my wife who is a mother. But let me, before I finish, add a couple of more people in this, because too often on Mother's Day, we leave out women who need to be honored as well. You say, what do you mean? There are some of you women, and sitting in church buildings all over America today, who have not been able to bear children for some reason. And it's very easy on this day for those women to sit there feeling that they are somehow left out. Either I never married and had no children, or there's something with my body or something with my husband's body or whatever. We've had no children, and they often sit there feeling, I honor mothers with you, but don't you understand the ache in my heart that I want to be a mother? There are other women who have at least had the process started in your body, but for whatever reason your body rejected that child and you miscarried. And there are women sitting in church houses all across America today who have tried their best to have children and gotten at least partway through the process and then suffered the pain of losing that child. There are other women who at some point in their life actually had a child that they made a decision that they would not continue that process. I'm assuming that some women might do that because they're callous and wholehearted, but based on the things that I have seen in my life, I think most women who make that decision make it out of fear. That I don't know if I can do this or not. I don't know what the life of my child will be. And that they didn't do it because they're calloused and angry. They did it because they were scared or hurt or didn't know what to do next. And Mother's Day has to be a tough day for them. When they sit here thinking, but I could have been. And then there are other women who decided that they would carry the child to term, but they knew they couldn't take care of it. And it may be that nobody in the world knows but a handful of people what they have done. But when their babies were born, rather than trying to raise them when they knew they didn't have the resources or the strength or the help that they needed, they contacted some agency like Agape and said, would you find my baby a good home? And on Mother's Day, they sat in a church house somewhere thinking, I don't know where he is, but I trust that he has a good life. I wonder what she's like. I trust that God gave her good parents. So for every woman, whether you have born children from your own womb or adopted a child that somebody else did that you truly became the mother of, or if you have lost a child, willingly or unwillingly, and you sit here saying, I honor those mothers, but you don't understand my pain, understand that this day is for you as well. And for those women who have never been able to have a child, many of them have been some of the best mothers on the planet, even though they were not able to adopt or be a foster home or foster parent. What they did was they just mothered the people around them as best they could. The young, or the middle-aged, or even the older. But they fulfilled their instincts to nurture, to protect, to mentor. And we honor you too. So if you have a child, praise God. If you don't have a child like that, God is still with you. God still honors you. So honor to all women. May God bless you beyond measure. And honor to my mother. I'm really happy that she's here on Mother's Day. And honor to my children, all daughters. One whom will never be a mother in the regular sense. One who already is, and one who's procrastinating. We have come to a time of helping. So I'll tell you what, rather than having a regular, when you end this song, would one of you shepherds come and just pray for all the women in this church? If in the meantime you need special prayer, you can make it known by coming to the front while we stand and sing.
Hear the sweet voice of Jesus say, come unto me, I am the way.